Welcome to the BLTNT podcast. I'm your host, Matt Loria, serving up real stories of business, life, technology, and transformations. You'll hear from interesting people about big changes from career shifts to life-altering decisions and the innovations that help make it all happen. It's about sharing those light bulb moments, pivot points, challenges overcome, and the journeys that inspire us to think differently. If you're on the lookout for insights to propel you forward, stories that resonate, or just a bit of inspiration on your next BLTNT move, you're in the right place. Let's dig in. Okay, welcome to this episode of the BLTNT podcast. As you can see from the background, we are still on the road. We're at Nubs Nob Ski Area in northern Michigan, Harbor Springs, Michigan. And I'm here with my friend Rob Dube, who's an author, speaker, CEO, businessman, successful entrepreneur.
Thanks for having me,
light of my life. No, total inspiration to so many people around him, including myself. So I'm just so happy to have you here.
I'm happy to be here. And I mean, being at Nubs Nob, you can't beat it with the fire going and, the beautiful snow out there, seeing everybody. I got all excited. I wanted to hop on the slopes.
You're a snowboarder, so you got the itch, I'm sure.
You said you were telemarking.
I was, yeah.
That's impressive.
For about an hour.
How are the legs feeling, the thighs?
They feel good. I've been doing some lunges at home, so I was ready.
You're ready for it. You're prepared.
Yeah. So excited to have you be here to have a discussion. You've written a new book recently that's been pretty exciting. You've been you were I think you were the first customer of EOS for most of our viewers would know EOS because our podcast is typically geared towards leaders in mid-market organizations. So, I think almost everybody's heard of it, but if they haven't, could you give a little explanation, then maybe talk a little bit about the book and how that all kind of ties in?
Yeah, for sure. So, about 9 years into founding my business way back when, we were kind of tripping over ourselves and we met this guy named Gino Wickman. And at the time, he was helping business owners kind of get control of their, what was going on within the business. It wasn't called EOS then. It was actually, I think, called the Business Accelerator or something like that. Yeah. And so we engaged with him, and he was tremendously helpful. And for all the reasons that EOS is world renowned now. It's because it's a simple system. It's easy to implement. And it changed our lives, literally. We had an opportunity to sell the company about 4 or 5 years after working with him. And we had a great multiple on the sale because, as the buyer said to us, you're a very well-run company, and we don't see that very often. And that had everything to do with incorporating EOS.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So every owner wants to hear that when it's time to sell, is that it's well run. You can walk away.
That's right.
And it's
huge.
Nice package.
Yeah.
And you get a much better price.
You do.
Fantastic. So obviously you're fully bought into EOS, and now you're teamed up with Gino Wickman, and you're actually partners in a organization and a whole system for business leaders. And I know I've even gone through and done your assessment on that. But can you talk about the book and the whole, the inspiration behind all this, and why for a guy who arguably could kind of stop working and go do some other fun things? Sure. Why are you doing all this?
Yeah. So, Gino and I struck up a strong friendship, a deep friendship, after we started working together. And so we get together, frequently throughout the year, really just to talk about life, not so much about business. And we learned that we had some things in common. We had some significant traumatic events that had happened to us throughout our lives, and we were working through those. Mm-hmm. I was deep in before we became friends, so I had already been through a lot of the work, as I'll call it. And fast forward to about 5 years ago, 2020, he had written out a list of things that were really useful for him as he was building his business, which he ultimately called the 10 disciplines.
Okay.
And so I'm reading these 10 disciplines that he wrote, and I said, oh my gosh, all these years we've been meeting, and I'm asking you all these questions because they were so unique, the way he was going about his life. And it was like, so if you know him, it was very particular and very focused and unwavering in any way. And I started to like glean off of them and live my life in that way as well. Mm-hmm. Not as well as he was, but, doing that. And so when I saw the 10 disciplines, I was like, oh my gosh, these are what I've been gleaning off of you all these years.
Yeah.
What's up with these? What are you doing? Because I think these could be really useful for driven entrepreneurs to help them gain control of the totality of their lives, to help them manage their energy, their impact, and do it with some inner peace. Mm-hmm. And so the two of us teamed up and we created a coaching program, which we've been running now for the last 4 years. And then just to kind of bring it full circle, we got inspired about a year or so into it to write a book. So we wrote a book called Shine, How Looking Inward is the Key to True Entrepreneurial Freedom. And what we're here to say is that, we've all had challenges in our lives, especially driven entrepreneurs. There seems to be a theme around that. Mm-hmm. And what we want to encourage driven entrepreneurs to do is do some work on the inside. What's going on with you in there?
Yeah.
And learn how to kind of come to terms with some of the things that have happened that have created this personality that you have, which is very powerful and very strong, but untapped potential, actually. Mm-hmm. And so through the way we lay it out in the book, you learn how to kind of go through this to really maximize your energy, and it'll help your business be better, but sneaky. On the sneaky side of things, you're gonna have a better life. The people around you, the people that matter most, are gonna notice a difference in you.
Yeah. That I think it's funny because I'm about halfway through the book, and some of the things that are really pinging me as I go through it is, we often joke, entrepreneurs, business leaders often joke, there must be something wrong with us that we chose to live this life, to do this and whatnot, and people make certain statements and everything. We it feels like we're wired different.
You are.
And when you guys were talking about in the book about that dopamine levels and dopamine response is actually different in about 10% of the people.
Yeah.
And those 10% of the people are the typical ones who err towards entrepreneurialism. And so it's like, so we weren't just joking about being a little crazy. We're a little off the off the mark of norm, but yeah, it's in our DNA. We almost can't fight it.
Yeah, let me share. I'm so glad that you picked up on that and the audiobook. There's a great book that we mentioned within our book. It's called Driven by Doug Brackman, and he did some study on this. And I have a cheat sheet that I'm looking down at because I never want to get it wrong. But essentially, it's genetic, and that all of us have something called the D2, D4 gene, but your gene and my gene has what's called an allele in it. So it's a little off. And because of that, we never quite feel rewarded. Mm-hmm. So that's why we're always kind of trying to go to the next thing. Like it's never
constant
enough.
Seeking almost. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so, the people around us are like, aren't you satisfied? And we're like, what are you saying to me? What do you mean, am I satisfied? No, I'm not satisfied. Are you? You are? How could that be? Yeah. And so the thing about this particular part of it is there's some really great things about that, because as driven people, as visionaries, we're able to make great impact. But the problem is we often leave a black trail behind us on our way on that path, and it disrupts people. The people in our lives, the people that matter most, our team members, behind the scenes, oftentimes they're saying, oh my God, he's nuts. He's got this idea today and that idea tomorrow. What does he want us to do? Mm-hmm. So what we're teaching you to do is how to manage it. Because when you manage it and get uber focused, that's when the magic really happens.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. Do you want to go through and kind of explain the actual 10 disciplines?
Sure.
Or how do you want to maybe share that?
Yeah, well, I have an idea, actually, because you were great. You went ahead and we have this assessment called the True Self-Assessment. And there's 2 parts to the book. The first part, which is where we're taking you. So we start with the end in mind.
Okay.
And that's the part it's called the 3 discoveries. And this is where we help you get closer to your true self, eventually freeing your true self. And then at the end, we talk about the 10 disciplines, and that's how you build the foundation in your life to do the work. So you have time and clear mind to do the work, which helps you free your true self. Now, I'm going to key in on some things on the assessment from what you took.
Okay.
And that will get us
as honest as possible.
You did a great
when answering
job.
These
you
questions.
did a great job. And so while we're going through it, what I'll be able to do is explain some of them so the listeners will have an understanding of what it all means.
Okay, great.
But I won't, so I'm not going to go through all 10. We'll just kind of hit on them as we hit on your assessment. Thank you for being a guinea pig. By the
no
way.
problem. No problem. We can always
Are
edit
you
this.
uncomfortable?
We can always edit this out if it's no, we're not going to edit it. This is going straight through no matter what it says. No matter how crazy it deems me.
So we always start with kind of what we might say the North Star and how important that is in our lives. And many of us have probably already heard that phrase, your North Star and things like that. So discipline number 1 is called 10-year thinking. And this is where we encourage you to shift your mind from short-term thinking to thinking in 10-year timeframes. And we even take our clients and our members through an exercise where they create a 10-year thinking vision. And so you scored a little bit on the lower side on that one. So that's just such a great place to start. And so I'll ask you just to do a little bit of an exercise. If we think out 10 years from now, which as we're recording here, it's December 19th, 2024. So 10 years from now, if you can imagine this, I want you to do this right now. Imagine this. It's December 19th, 2034.
Okay.
Okay. And if you don't mind sharing with the audience, how old will you be?
I'll be 57.
57. Okay. So you're imagining yourself right now. I want you to do this exercise.
Well, when you said, am I comfortable? I was thinking my left hip is a little uncomfortable. So I'm thinking 10 years from now,
it'll definitely be a good one.
It might be really uncomfortable.
So imagine yourself right now. 57 years, did you say 57?
57.
57 years old. It's 2034. I want you to imagine for a second the number one most important thing that will have happened in your life. Number one, just close your eyes for a second and imagine that.
Well, I think
what comes up for you?
That 2 of my kids will probably be married.
2 will be married?
Yes.
Okay. So you imagine that's the number one.
One just has to make it to June next year because he's already engaged. So I think the other one, though, will be married.
Okay. Okay.
The other 2 will still be too young, I think.
Okay.
They could be. But okay,
so,
let's say 2.
So using this as your number one most important thing that will happen in your life, let's build on this a little. What are some of the things that need to happen so that they are married? Or engaged? Did you say married or engaged?
Well, one is already engaged.
One's engaged, so one will be married.
One is single.
Yeah.
So,
what are some of the most important things that will need to happen?
Well, obviously, the one will have to go through with their wedding, and then the other, and his fiance will need to follow through with it as well.
Yeah.
And then our daughter would need to meet the appropriate person.
Meet the appropriate person, right? And then from whatever you can do to support that. What are the things that need to happen for you to support that?
Yes, I mean, I would think that, I would think this probably certain things will go back to the business, right? I'll have to achieve certain things so that I can help to fund that endeavor.
Yeah.
But, I guess I don't know what I would be able to directly do, to influence all of those things that would need to happen for them. But, so I guess I probably should focus more to the work side. And probably also to my own relationship with my wife. Obviously my wife and I, hopefully if our relationship continues to be strong, God willing, and that we continue to put in the work and do the right things, that would be happening. And then that the business would be in a very strong position for me to be able to continue to take the appropriate time for family and doing all the right things.
So wise words right there. Okay. So that's the 10-year. The 2034, 2 of the kids, I think you said were married, maybe 3, I can't remember.
Yeah.
And so you're identifying some things that are going to need to happen along the way. So you have the long term, you have the North Star.
Okay.
And so the way you show up with your wife today is going to have an impact 10 years from now. So when you're not showing up right with her, and I'm not saying you do or you don't.
Oh, I'm believe it or not, I'm perfect.
I had a feeling, but we're just going through an exercise here
case,
to teach, right?
For other people.
You might pause in that moment of stimulus and response, right?
I understand exactly what you're saying. I think you gave me an example of how it happens with you with the dishes.
Dishwasher. That's my favorite. Yeah, so I shared with Matt an example when we spoke before this. And, there's kind of a joke that I learned about the dishwasher. And that is, we want to have a great relationship with our significant other. And we're sitting there and we're watching them load the dishwasher. And they're doing it all wrong. And it's irritating, and we just want to push them out of the way so we can go do our own Tetris with it and make it perfect. And so, if we take action on that, that really doesn't align with having a caring and loving relationship. It's like so petty, but actually this happens. Like people actually do this.
Right.
And that's why I love to use it as an example, because most people seem to relate to it. So instead you pause in that moment of stimulus and response and you look at your significant other and you think to yourself how deeply you are in love with this person. And you fill your heart with the light and you feel the warmth around that, and you send that energy within you and to that significant other. And that shifts all the energy, because our book is a lot about energy. And so that shifts all the energy, and all of a sudden, the dishwasher, who cares, right? They end up clean anyway. And if two of the plates don't get clean, who cares? You run it again, whatever the deal is, right?
Right. That's awesome.
So yeah, that's
so kind of the lens of love, right? I mean, that you're
absolutely
looking at it through, as opposed to the lens of you're doing it wrong.
Right. And then you talked about, being prepared financially to be able to support the weddings, and that's that's an important thing to think about. So now today, you don't have to do it. So now you get to take steps to doing that, preparing yourself. So the way you manage the money, the way you plan to save, the way you envision the wedding might go down, the budget that you might envision, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You can be thinking about that today. So your actions today prepare you for the future. And so those are two great examples. Thank you for sharing and kind of going through the exercise. And the last thing that I wanted to share that I think is super impactful that you said is, about the relationship that you have with your wife. Because what happens with our kids? They're watching us. And if it's a healthy relationship, they are going to be drawn to a healthy relationship.
Of course.
Right? And when it's an unhealthy relationship, they're either going to have strong self-awareness to know, like, I don't want that kind of relationship, and I'm going to work really hard, which most people don't end up doing. They end up
emulating
it, and it becomes a generational thing.
Right.
Their kids will have the same issue. And we don't want that for our kids. Of course not. We want the best. So when we have a strong relationship, they have a better chance for success in that regard. Yeah. So
I've been hearing a lot lately about the knock. When an employee knocks on your office door and says, "Got a minute?" and you immediately know it's some sort of IT incident. But Oxium IT can help. Whether you're having a problem, need consulting, an upgrade, or a managed IT approach, they focus on preventing cyber attacks and proactive solutions that deliver results. My friend Matt Loria and everyone at Oxium are ready to help before or after you get the knock. Visit Oxium.com and let Oxium IT help you outsmart chaos.
All right, good job on the 10-year thinking. Let's talk about this one. I love this one. And it's discipline number 2, take time off. And what we encourage everybody to do is take 130 days off per year. Yes, I did say 130 days without thinking about work the entire day that you're off. Okay, that's the one that really throws people off. So let me just put it all in perspective first. So if you just took every weekend, every U.S. holiday, and then I think 4 weeks vacation, that's about 130 days. Okay, so then most people
go, sounds crazy at first, but then you break it down.
Most people are like, oh, weekends? Okay, holidays? Okay. So here's where it kind of gets the rub. It's doing it without thinking about work the whole time. And what that means is no, you can't peek at your email on your phone when you're at your kid's soccer game because you're bored. That's the dopamine you were talking about a second ago.
Yeah, I need a hit.
Right?
I need a
right?
hit. Send and receive.
You can't sneak away for an hour to finish up the project on XYZ or whatever the case.
Well, one of the things I listened to in the book was, you can't be on the beach reading the how to get better at business book.
Exactly. It's like, I had the greatest vacation. I caught up on all my business magazines and books, and I'm raring to go now. No, that is not getting away from business. So you're a 3 on that. So talk a little bit about that. How's that tough for you? How does that show up for you?
Well, I think it's I think I'm a dopamine freak. I think I'm always looking for my hit from my from my device.
Yeah.
And I like to stay plugged in. I want to know what's going on. I also don't want to get caught sideways of not knowing what's happening back at the office. Right. And I'm very fortunate, like you, like I said, following your footsteps on a lot of things you've done. You've hired a great CEO to run your Image One organization.
Right. Yep.
I hired a president who's running day-to-day operations at Oxium, and the way that she keeps me informed is very solid. So I'm very fortunate there, but I still look for the hit. I still look for the hit.
That was good. My next question is, you got the solid team in place, and now you've got some space, some time. That's your most valuable asset that you have in your life, all of us. And so what's drawing you back in? Why is it hard to kind of let things go and completely turn off?
I mean, I think it's the anxiety of, the what if thinking.
Yeah.
The, what elements can only I do, right? That are maybe just stuck in my head, right? That maybe they're not really true. Maybe someone can do it better than I can. And I know that is the case on many things, but I think it's just that, that whole feeling of not wanting to get caught, blindsided by something. So I know there's a lot of work that I could do to trust the system a little bit better. But yeah, I think it's that. But I also think that it's just that there's an addiction, right? There's an addiction to the work. And do you remember the movie Scrooged with Bill Murray? Yeah. And he says, Grace. His assistant Grace wants to go home early for Christmas Eve, right? And he says, "Well, Grace, if you don't work late, then I can't work late, and if I can't work late, I can't work late." And it's like
that's good.
There's an addiction to the work, right? And
for
so,
sure.
And I think that in my line of work, and probably in your line of work, there's not kind of an open and close real quick on what goes on. We help people when they're ready for the help, right? So we might meet someone in 3 years ago and then finally start doing business with them in 3 years. We might meet somebody right in the middle of a problem and they kind of need something right away. But because I'm not really even delivering the work, in my position in the company, I don't know what I do sometimes, right? And so some days I just go home, even though I have a lawn service, I'll go home and cut the lawn because I need to see something finish and complete.
Yeah, everything you're saying is so great. I love this. Thank you for this. Okay. Because, first of all, you mentioned addictions. And in the book, we write about this. We have a friend named Justin Breen, and he wrote a magazine for he wrote an article for Inc. magazine. He works with entrepreneurs. He said, "I have yet to meet an entrepreneur who hasn't experienced at least one of the following." And you and I know enough entrepreneurs that this will resonate with about them or us.
Sure.
Bankruptcy or potential bankruptcy, heightened levels of anxiety, depression, traumatic experiences as a child or young adult. And then Gino and I added a fifth one, which we call addiction. And that's doing something compulsively in excess that is not good for you. Work, food, porn, drugs, alcohol, gambling, TV, social media, gaming, shopping, just to name a few. Oh, and by the way, work is the number one that we seem to have an addiction to.
That's funny.
But work takes on a positive connotation.
Sure.
And so we get positive feedback because we're always working. Usually, maybe not from our significant other
Right.
or our families,
Yeah, I was thinking
but the world.
that's what I'm wondering about the judgment of my wife. She'll go, oh, he has all of those.
Right? Yeah, so many. I had 4, by the way, for whatever that's worth.
I don't have all of them. Just
But, the other thing is this goes to the beginning of the book, the part that's called the 3 discoveries to freeing your true self, because I will challenge you, we won't do it now, but I'll challenge you to think more deeply about all this and start to uncover and peel back some layers around where all this stuff is really coming from, because you use words like anxiety and I'm the one who can do it and et cetera. And those are all deep-rooted emotions and feelings and thoughts that are going on that came from somewhere. And when they're free, you won't feel that way.
I won't know how to feel at that point.
You'll feel, you will know how to feel.
Teasing.
You will, I promise you.
No, but I mean, it's very apparent. I mean, we had this conversation, I think 3-4 years ago, when we were chatting about some other things.
Yeah,
and I said, Rob, how do you do it? There's just a calm to you that I don't feel was your natural bent.
Right? That is
because
true.
You don't really achieve certain things that you've achieved with too much chill, right? And so you've really found it for yourself.
Yeah.
And so I think that's that's what draws me towards you, right? It's like, oh, I know that he was more like this. And
definitely in my younger years, I was on edge all the time. My personality was edgy. And it was in my personal life and in my business life. And guess what? You don't have an edgy personality, but when I did back then, and that was showing up in a million little ways all over the place and wreaking havoc in my life. And it was a horrible feeling.
Sure.
I couldn't stand it. And that was enough to ping me to start down a journey. And I simply, when I was in my mid-20s, I simply started going to therapy. I had asked somebody, like, I'm a mess, like, what should I do? And somebody said, go to therapy. Nowadays, therapy is very, easily talked about, and many people go to therapy. It's like no big deal. Back then, that wasn't quite like that. So it was even harder for me to, like, get up the energy to go do that. But that sent me down a path of seeking, and it was very useful. But, one of the other things that was useful that we'll talk about next is discipline number 4, which is be still. And this is where we encourage you to sit in silence for at least 30 minutes every single day. And once you know it, you had a lower score there. So what's going on? Why is it hard for you to be still?
I do that when I'm sleeping. I'll often be still.
Sleeping doesn't count.
Yeah,
you must be conscious.
Yeah, it's funny. I was on the couch the other day, and I was shaking my foot, and I said to my wife, I said, I have that same tick, if you will, when I'm nervous. My brain does it when I'm calm and when I'm nervous.
Yeah.
And it's like not in between. And it's always movement, and I'm always moving. And I'll be in a meeting, and somebody will say, "Why are you bouncing? You nervous?" No, I'm in my zen right now.
Uh-huh.
And so movement is definitely something that I've got going. I mean, my parents said I was walking at 10 months, when I was a baby, and so I guess I've been moving ever since. So I don't always feel that it's anxiety for me, or that that I'm wound up about something, but I feel like I've got a lot of energy.
Yeah, there you go. Good. So what you're talking about is I have a lot of physical energy, right? And one of the traits of the driven, which you are one, is they move their legs a lot. Did you know that?
I did not.
Yeah. So look at your other driven friends. I'll bet you their legs are bouncing. Yeah. And I've noticed you do it a couple of times. So that's so great. So what that is energy inside of you, actually.
Okay.
Yeah. It's the energy field inside of you. And it's got stuff going on, and it's manifesting in movement. Yeah. You have to move. You have to, release. And it's a form of release by just those little movements, that bouncing. So that's where that's coming from. And sometimes that can be healthy, and other times it's not as healthy, but it's nothing to obsess on whatsoever. But in stillness, we allow our body and our mind to settle. And so I'll use an example. You imagine a clear jar with sand filled with water and a tight cap on top, and you shake it up and the sand is swirling around, and I hold it up and I try to see through it to see you, but I can't because it's all mucky.
Okay.
That's what's happening with your body and your mind every day, all day long. It's not as clear as it could be. But when you set the jar down for a little bit of time, the sand settles, and then you can see clearly through it. And you want a clear mind. You want to be able to think at your highest level. And what's crazy about the driven, people like you, you're already so damn smart that you don't even understand what your true potential is. Because a lot of times you're already the smartest person around.
I don't think that, so don't worry.
Okay. But you are. You really are. You can feel it. Like you're in a leadership position.
Sure.
Yeah, and
Sure.
you have it. People come to you for answers, and you help them in a very specific way, whether it's through asking the right questions or just knowing from years of experience, your intuition, your gut. You are often that person.
Sure.
But you're actually, you have more in you. But that's you're not in a position to access it because you're too busy busying yourself. Okay, so you take 30 minutes. Now, I took on a meditation practice 20 years ago, and that was life-changing for me. So I meditate a little over an hour per day. That's just me. I'm not saying that's you.
And your form of meditation, is it absolute stillness?
Yes, I sit in a
silence?
lotus position and I focus on my breath.
Okay.
And when I notice my thoughts are arising, that's what happens in meditation. You have thoughts because that's what's happening all day, every day. You notice your thoughts, you allow them to float by like clouds in the sky, and then you come back to your breath and just focus on the path of your breath to sort of settle those thoughts and just come into the present moment. Because that is all that we actually have. Where are you usually? Even during this conversation, you're probably oftentimes in the future thinking about what you might say next or what kind of question you want to ask me, which is human nature, and I don't fault you for that. But that's often what's happening. Or you could be in the past, like as I'm talking and your mind starts to wander because you might have ADHD if you're driven. You might be thinking, oh, I went telemarketing today. My hip's kind of bugging me. What is that? Oh, wait, I'm in a conversation right now. So you go into the past. So often we're in the past or we're in the future. And we're hardly ever in the present moment, which is another one of the things you had on here.
I'm trying real hard to be in the present moment.
I love it.
It's actually quite easy for me in this setting to be very present. Now, you are right, though, that I am thinking, what else are we going to talk about?
Right.
What do I want to make sure that we cover? What do I want to make sure that gets shared? But in this particular case, you're driving. So I'm
good.
I'm
so
sitting
you're
here
just
kind of taking it
you're
in.
dialed in, and that's beautiful. That's when you're, as we call it, that's floating. It's when you're so in the flow that you feel like you're floating. F-L-O-W-T. We made that word up.
Floating.
You are floating. Yeah, F-L-O-W-T. Flow and float. So when you're really dialed in, especially in business, you just feel like you're floating. It's like time ceased to exist, right?
Sure.
So we were talking about meditation and how I go about meditating and why I do it is because it helps settle. I have a very busy mind. I'm sure you don't. I'm kidding, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I have a very busy mind and it needs to settle down. And what you start to notice in meditation is your patterns and your loops, the things that you get yourself caught up in. And then you start to bring awareness to those patterns and those loops. And that awareness gives you the opportunity to change the unhealthy ones. Have you ever had a conversation with somebody in your mind? Somebody actually that was, maybe it was a negative impact, and you're replaying something in your mind. And then you're like, okay, wait, and then you come back to it like the next day and the next day and you're replaying it. And that's a loop.
Thinking about what could I have said differently?
Yeah.
What will I say next time?
Yeah. What should I do? Yeah. All that. So that's a loop. And during meditation, we want to notice our loops and come back to the present moment. Because again, that's all you really have is the present moment. Okay, so meditation is one way that you can be still. But that isn't something that everybody feels that they're drawn to or that they feel comfortable with or whatever the case might be. So we always recommend a few additional. Many people are very faith-based, so use this time as prayer and connect deeply with God, and really allow God in and allow the light in and all that kind of stuff, which everyone else that has a faith knows better than I do. Okay, so I won't go any further on that. The other thing is journaling. So that's a great way for some people who have trouble sitting still, that they can be sort of in movement because you're moving your hand, and we encourage writing, not typing, and just letting your thoughts go free form. Don't worry about spelling or grammar, or even if you can go back and read it. Oftentimes my journaling, I can't even read it if I go back. Some people like to go back to their journaling. So this is something that you can experiment with and decide what works best for you. But journaling is another way to take the kind of craziness that's going on in our minds and getting it out onto paper, releasing it. And then the last thing is contemplation. So what's contemplation? Well, let's say you have a window in your office, you might look out and you might just look up in the sky or at the trees going back and forth in the wind, and you just might contemplate on the bigger things in life, the meaning of life, and just things that are very challenging to have answers to, so much so that you won't even try to answer them. You'll just be in a state of wonderment. So contemplation is another thing that you can do. So those are 4, and I'm sure there's 40 or 400.
Sure.
Just find yours, 30 minutes. So
every day.
Every day. So what would a barrier be to finding 30 minutes for you every day?
I think just setting it aside.
I
think I have it.
You have it.
I have it. I just have to set it aside. In the past, when I've tried meditation or prayer like that, I fall asleep. So that's been a challenge, is staying awake through that.
Yeah.
And it seems like when I settle, my brain thinks, "Oh, he must be done with me for a while here."
Yeah.
And so that's happened. So that's been one of my challenges.
Okay, so 2 things for you. First, what's the best time for you?
For a meditation or prayer time?
Yeah.
Probably morning.
Morning?
Yeah.
Early morning, mid-morning, late morning?
I found like that for my exercise routine, I'm best if I give it a little time to wake up. If I don't just, go right from sleep to working out. I know some people can pop up at 5 and by 5:05
they're working out.
They're working.
Right.
That's
you
not
ease into it a little
maybe
bit more,
15, 20 minutes I need of just a little bit of ramp up. So
yeah.
I have a nice bald head. I'm able to I shave my head and do all my primping.
Yeah.
And then by then that usually gives me about 15, 20 minutes to just kind of wake up and then, then I'm pretty good. And that's when I go do my exercise. So I would think that probably before the exercise, or after the exercise, one of those two. And maybe after the exercise, because I'm typically feeling like I'm finding myself running to the next thing right after.
There you go, a good segue.
So perhaps that would be the little circuit breaker in between.
There you go. Okay, so hypothetically speaking, we kind of know where you can fit it in. So hopefully you'll pencil that in on the calendar.
Yep.
Or maybe ink it in.
Yep. I think I'll have to go with ink.
Okay. The other thing about falling asleep, by the way, which you're bringing up some really great stuff, by the way. Really, you are. So I hear that all the time. What does it mean when you fall asleep? This is not a trick question.
Okay. That you're tired.
You're tired. Guess what?
I'm tired.
You're tired. That's why you fall asleep. So you go to do your prayer, your meditation, whatever it might be, your journaling, whatever. Person falls asleep. So what I always say to you is, guess what? You're not getting enough sleep. That's your body, because you intentionally took time to stop. You got to listen to what your body told you. And what your body immediately told you was, you aren't giving me enough sleep, dude. Give me some sleep. You're just going 1,000 miles an hour. Because when you and I are going 1,000 miles an hour, we're just plowing through it. Right? You just go. It's the energy. It's the dopamine.
I'm laughing just because of how my day this morning. Right? I mean, I woke up, went hunting, did some work, did a podcast, skied for an hour and a half.
My God.
Ate lunch, took a work phone call, and then here. So like I've definitely not
So typical.
not resting.
So typical.
And that's fairly typical. There's a boat in the harbor
God.
up here that's called Never Ever Rest. And over the summer we were out on my brother's boat in the harbor here, and one of the people with us said, "Matt, Nadine, there's your boat right there," because we're both kind of wired.
Nadine's fast going.
My wife and I are both very high energy, always moving.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of settling. This episode of the BLTNT podcast is sponsored by Auxium, business IT and cybersecurity designed to outsmart chaos. Empowered by Juniper Networks. Automate your network with Juniper Networks and the Mist AI platform, the world's first AI-driven wired and wireless network.
Well, another great benefit to be still is you notice the sensations in your body. And that's an important thing for us to be in tune with in a much different way. And so when you settle down, you notice you're tired, you might notice certain aches, pains, whatever. And those are important cues to you to wake up in a different sense, not from sleep, but wake up to your life, that there's things going on and you're not paying attention to them.
Sure.
And your body will give you the messages very quickly. Another great book, The Body Keeps the Score.
Yep, we've read that.
You know that's, yes. Oh, that's right. I did
Mm-hmm.
know you read that. Yeah. So that is a great one. Okay. So do you want to keep going with this? This is really good as far as I'm concerned.
Hey.
Yeah. Okay.
You're the man.
All right.
You're in charge.
So one of your lower scores, I think it may have been your lowest, is discipline number 5, which is know your 100%. And that is for you to decide on and commit to the perfect number of hours per week and weeks per year that you will deliver your impact to the world. So talk to me a little bit about what came up for you on that one.
You know, read me can you read me how the question reads on the assessment?
Oh, yeah. I know the perfect number of hours per day and weeks per year during which I want to deliver my value to the world.
Yeah, I don't know that magic number at all. And so I think I put a 1 or a 2.
You did. You put a 1. That's great.
Because I just don't know what that is. I always feel like it's all of it, right? It's not an answer of like, 2 hours a day is good, or 10 hours a day is good. I don't feel like I shut off, and so I feel like I'm constantly trying to figure out a way to provide value. Right. So I think that I'm always working on that. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, even when I told you the genesis of the podcast was I go out with a lot of people, get a chance to meet a lot of people, go out to lunch, coffee, whatever. And I'm always going into that thinking, what can I do for this person? Right. How can I add value to them? Who could I introduce them to? I love connecting people. And so that's kind of constant, and it's always recurring. And so, that was a real tough one for me to say, I know a number there. And I don't. Let me ask you a question. Can you answer that in a definitive, like
yes, I
1
can.
hour a day type of thing? Or,
yes, I can.
And what's that number, and how do you?
Yeah.
how do you come to it?
For me and for anyone listening, know this, it can change throughout your life. So when I was younger, I would go 60, 70 hours a week.
Okay.
Work. Okay, so this is where I'm working and delivering impact. Now, I only have max 35 hours in me.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's where anything after 60, 70 hours or anything after now for me, 35 hours, it's diminishing returns.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it.
So what's the point? What's the point in doing diminishing returns? I'm not interested in that. So what can I do at that time? Well, that's, each person has their own answer to that, because what we're wired to do is keep going. It's not time to quit.
Right.
Quit for the day.
Yep.
And then you start thinking, what am I going to even do? Go home, hang around, putz around. I don't know. So what do? You keep working, and it's all diminishing returns work. So what's the point? So I don't know what you're going to do. We actually put you through an exercise to think about what you might do, because there's a whole world out there of things you could do if you need to be doing.
We can keep you busy, right?
You can find something to do. You go mow your lawn. I like that. That's great. Like, some people do that. They like doing that kind of stuff. So the point here is you can't be delivering impact every hour of every day for 60, 70 hours. very unicornish. And most of us just frankly, no, sorry to break it to you, you're not a unicorn.
Oh yeah.
Okay?
No,
Yeah.
I mean, I know that I've had personal, not, whether it be kind of more of like a mental or a physical kind of, things that have happened where my old business partner used to say, you have an uncanny ability to handle enormous amounts of stress and, work a crazy amount of hours. And I'm like, at first I was like, oh, thank you,
Yeah.
And then I'm like, wait, this isn't good. Like
Good for you for
this
recognizing
is going to
that.
show up somewhere. And it did, it showed up in plenty of places for
Yeah.
me. And so I know that it's not unlimited. Plus I've had, people that I've worked with, family members and whatnot, and watched that hitting those points of diminishing return where it's like, if I'm just here, it'll fix everything. And that just doesn't work like that.
That's so right. So
I've
like
definitely seen that.
imagine you're a person who works 60 hours a week, and then all of a sudden, under some kind of circumstances, you were told you cannot work more than 40 hours a week. Okay. Now, as you adjust your mindset, you have to get really clear on what's important, because you don't have those additional 20
hours just
anymore.
went away,
Yeah, 20 hours went away. So all of a sudden you got to relook at everything.
Yep.
And you got to say, okay, these are the things that are most important. Okay, look at that. Look at what just happened. You just had to, because you were told you don't have these 20 hours anymore, you had to reduce to what was most important. Now, are you going to make a greater impact because of that? Absolutely you are. You're going to do much better work. You're going to have much greater energy, because guess what? That additional 20 hours, you will be re-energizing yourself, and that doesn't mean, for example, you couldn't go out and go telemarketing for a few hours every single day. That's a different type of energy. That's a physical exertion. The energy that we're talking about is inherent within you. We are all balls of energy, all of us. There's atoms, protons, and neutrons that are moving around in our body, and that's energy. So that's a real thing. And your energy can be flowing really strong, or it can get blocked.
Sure.
And when you are, like your partner said to you, which was a badge of honor at the moment, it might have been, but then you rethought it. So many of us, when they tell us that you can handle anxiety, you work so many hours, you're amazing, it feels like a badge of honor. It becomes part of our identity, part of our identity. But what it does is it wreaks havoc on our bodies and our mind. And what we see often is, for example, many driven with chronic pain that won't go away, or different kinds of illnesses that pop up. And they're like, because they're driven, they don't take any down and they just work through the illness, which is all that's happening is you didn't catch a cold. Okay. What happened was you were worn down. You were around somebody who had some germs, who had a cold, and you easily caught it because your body wasn't prepared, and your body's wants to send you a message that you are killing yourself.
Sure.
But what do? We go full-fledged with our cold and the aches and the pain. I'm using that just to illustrate. It could be anything. Back pain is huge. I can't tell you how many driven have back pain. And it's recurring. And what do? Go to the chiropractor. They're going to this. They're doing that. A lot of them get to the point where they're going to have surgery. And if you look at the studies, you will actually find that the surgery does not oftentimes help. What's going on is a physical manifestation of their stress levels. They do not have a back problem.
So what's coming up for me as you're talking about this, and we're going through the questions that the assessment that I did, is that so many people, they'll write a book, right, or produce a blog or something like that, but you guys have gone and made an actual coaching process, with a lot of different points of entry to be able to do it. And obviously we can share all that at the appropriate time whenever you'd like. But because that's kind of what comes up for me is the other people who are trying to consume this, right? So I'm trying to put myself in the position of somebody who might be watching this going, okay, so one, the stuff that Rob's talking about is a little woo-woo for me, right? So some people probably think that. But the other thing is okay, let's say the people that get past that point or are already embracing it are going, okay, but I'm not going to do it on my own. I know these, right? I'm going to read these things right here. I got these 10 things right here, but I'm not going to do them on my own. right? It's like, why do personal trainers exist? Right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's great that, that you're living it. One, you're living it, right?
Yeah,
so it's kind of like why I enjoy kind of following you as an entrepreneur, right? You're a successful entrepreneur. So you're not simply coaching something that you just read about. You eat your own dog food, right?
For sure.
And then you're out there doing it. So I do appreciate that for you. And I wanted to just kind of interrupt and make mention of that, and also just make mention so that if anybody who's watching and says, hey, I want to be subjected to this same sort of interrogation that Matt's, no, I'm just kidding. That they, that they know that this is a process that they can go through that's facilitated.
Yeah. First, if you take the true self-assessment and you're interested in having this kind of dialogue with somebody on our team, we will do that with you for 30 minutes. And so that'll give you some insights. If you feel like you need help, we have a video series you could go through that's self-guided. We have a live coaching program that's on Zoom. It's 1 hour a week for 10 weeks. By the end, you have a strong foundation with the 10 disciplines. That's our goal, is that you exit that with a strong foundation moving forward. And that enables you to build upon everything you learned so we can get you to the point of inner peace, because that's what we want you to feel.
That's where we're going.
Yeah, that's where we're going. Exactly. And one of my favorite ones, and one of the, as we look at we've had, I don't know, it's like over 4,000 people take this assessment now. It's crazy. And one of the biggest struggles for people is discipline number 6, which is say no often. And this is where we say no to everything that doesn't fit into the first 5 disciplines.
Okay.
And we've gone through 4 of the 5. And yours was on the medium to low side. And so talk about saying no. And the question that you answered was, I know when to say no often, and to set effective boundaries.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that there's certain relationships where I can do it, and there's others that I cannot.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I think, so I think on the balance, I think I would be to the low side, right? I'm sure there's certain relationships where I'm spot on, say no appropriately, but plenty that I don't. And obviously as you're getting through this, you're starting to, you look back at those previous 5 and you're setting yourself up here. By the time you've answered this, you're going, oh, okay, I got a lot of work to do, right? But you can also see where they build upon themselves, right? So if you're operating on 10-year thinking, if you're taking the time off, if you're truly knowing yourself, if you're truly being still, if you know your 100% work capacity, I mean, all those end up answering the question of number 6, which is say no often, right? And so, because if you know what your capacity, I mean, even if you just look at the previous one, right? Knowing what your capacity is, there's no room at the inn.
Yeah.
Okay. If we know there's no room, there's no room.
Right.
Sort of thing. So no, I appreciate that one. And I think the work on the prior 5 is where 6 is going to come into scope.
Absolutely. And first of all, I just want to say, for most of us, saying no is very hard, and we feel guilty.
Of course.
And we want to help. Like I love that you said, one of the things you love doing and the way you make impact is you're always thinking like, how can I help this person? How can I introduce them to this person? How can I connect some dots for them? I mean, what a gift to be friends with Matt. Geez, he's always thinking for us, right? But for you to make the greatest impact, there will be times that you need to look at what's coming at you. And as badly as you want to help, connect dots, you have a certain time constraint. Time's your greatest asset. And you have an impact that you're trying to make. Mm-hmm. And everything can't fit into that time constraint.
Yeah.
So it's very empowering to say no, because it says to the world, I'm really clear about what matters most and the biggest impact that I'm going to make.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, it happened to me coming up here, right as I was getting ready to get out of town on Wednesday, mm-hmm. to get here, and we had a scheduled appointment with our podcast guest. My brother calls, and he was getting a new car and we had a bunch of moving parts. There's always a bunch of moving parts, but He had a car at my house that we were selling because we thought it might sell better downstate than in northern Michigan. And so, long story short is he ends up buying a new car. So he's at the dealership and he's saying, "Hey, maybe you could drive up one of these other cars." And I wanted to say yes, right? But the time constraint, I mean, I'm looking at the clock. I was at Pasty White Guy, you go to the skin doctor. I go to the skin doctor twice a year at least. I'm in the skin doctor. I have obligations to Jackie, who runs the podcast, and I knew that she was bringing up her mom with her and everything. And I'm going, I can't see how this computes, right? And so I just had to say no, right. And plus, I didn't want to. So I was even truthful with him. I said, plus, I don't want to drive back a rental car back home on Sunday. But yeah, I mean, it rented so much space in my head to say no. Yeah. It's just remarkable. The way
you said that. Yeah. And the thing is we teach how to say no gracefully. And there's so many ways to be able to do that where you don't leave people just like you don't care. Right. It's like, no, I care, but here's the situation and here's some ideas for you. So you can do it very
I did do that.
You did it. You're
situation.
graceful.
Yeah. But it wasn't like, walking by the homeless fella and saying, I don't carry cash. It wasn't, it was better thought out than that. And I usually don't carry cash in situations
just
like
in
that.
Case anybody's looking
just in
to
case,
sneak up behind you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's all credit. Just kidding.
I love it.
Sorry, where else did I?
Let's do one more out of the first 10. Okay. So discipline number 8, which is prepare every night. And this is where we encourage you, before your head hits the pillow every night, document the next day's plan.
What did I give
You gave it a 3.
Okay.
So it's simply taking about 10 minutes, maybe less, maybe more, depending on your routine, to prepare mentally for the next day. So talk to me about that.
I would say that I do a fair amount of it. So I was trying to be, when I joked at the beginning and said, I answered it as honestly as I could. I really was thoughtful on every answer that I gave to say, okay, what do I do every night? Okay. So every night I do lay in bed. I double check my calendar. I typically will check it against my wife's calendar, not my wife's, plural, my wife's calendar, and say, okay, hey, do you have this? Or I see, because I'll show her certain things that maybe are taking me away from the house and say, are you aware of this? Right? What are we missing? Is there a basketball practice? Is there a basketball game? Is there something? Because I always commit to being at as many, my commitment is to try to be at every game. And I'm typically there. Yeah. Okay. So I did miss one for you.
Wow.
I can't say
you.
I can't say
you
no.
couldn't say no? Wow.
But
I'm honored.
No, I'm kidding. So I think I do a decent job. So when I gave a 3, it was decent.
Yeah.
Everything else was truly if it was good or I'm on the mark.
Yeah.
So I think I've got a little bit.
And
I
would say that's decent. Some areas where maybe you could improve if you wanted to, and we would encourage you to want to. I think I heard you say when I'm in bed.
Yeah.
So what we don't mean is literally you're about to have your head hit the pillow in your bed. Yeah. That isn't what we don't mean it literally. What we mean is as you wrap up your workday, within your 100%. Let's just say it's 5:30. I'm just going to use that as an example. Before you sort of wrap it all up, you do a quick scan, just like you do. Maybe you got to do a coordination call or quick, get together with your wife to make sure all the logistics with kids and all the different things are there. But you're wrapping it up so when you're done, you're done. You don't come back to it.
Put a bow on it.
You put a bow on it and you're done for the day. So you don't, now the rest of it is non-work time.
I do not do that.
Yeah. So that's where and I think you appropriately, you gave yourself the right number because you could move that up a couple ticks.
Sure.
Yeah,
sure.
For sure.
Yeah. And I'm thinking about, how I take my notes and how I schedule things. And most of my things are in blocks and on calendar, but there is still some to-do items that I keep as well. Going through those would be something that I would probably work and again, work in the confines of that work day.
Yeah. So we teach you kind of a way to wrap up your day within the confines. That's one of the things.
I'm glad you say you teach that, because as I was thinking, I was already negotiating with myself. But it doesn't really matter if it bleeds over to 6:30 or 7:30.
I love that you're negotiating with yourself. That's so good. It's so typical, by the way. So typical. All right, what do you want to do from here? We hit on the 10 disciplines.
Did I get anything good?
Yes, you did. Absolutely, 100%. So first of all, you're a humble person, and I know that about you. So that's easy for me to say, okay. And discipline number 10 is be humble, which is view yourself as an equal to every other person on this planet. And within that one, we also encourage and teach the practice of gratitude and having an intentional daily time where you express gratitude either in your mind, or maybe some people do it during their be still time where they journal it.
Okay.
And that's all kind of part of the humility spectrum. Life is better when you're humble because you attract other humble people.
Sure.
And that's a beautiful sort of community to be a part of. But humility could be subtle. And I always like to use kind of like a simple example that I think most people relate to. And that's like you go out for an evening to a restaurant, and the restaurant isn't really on their game. We've all had this happen to us. And so we're sitting there and like, where's the server? What is going on? I'm starving, And then you make your order, and, if you're like me, it's like, I want this, but without that, this, and this. And they're not writing it down. And you're thinking to yourself, are you getting all this?
Right.
Well, are you good? And you start having all these judgments going on, right? And they're late with the food and they didn't get it right. And now you start, if you're like us, driven entrepreneurs, we're figuring out how to run the place better. Yeah. If this was my place, here's what I would do. Okay, so if you're like that in any way, which I've done this plenty of times, so I'm fully coming forth, then dial it back. Start to notice when you're having these subtle judgments, because there's not humility in that. Subtle judgments or big judgments, there's not humility in that.
It's interesting you say that judgment. One of the things that I've been working on for the last 12 months has been to lower or eliminate cynicism.
Oh, I love that.
And so it's very freeing.
It is.
To stop that judgment. I had an old boss that used to say, resign your position as general manager of the universe.
I love that guy.
Stop trying to fix everything. Stop trying to fix
perfect.
everybody. But for me, it was the cynicism. It's that voice. What tone is the thought coming? Not coming out of your mouth, but going back in and reverberating through your head. Is it like, is Rob crazy? It's like no. But you can answer and go, is Rob different? And he's achieved certain things, and he's enlightened in a certain way, and he's read up on. Okay, right now, I mean, much different approach on that.
Yeah,
right.
No doubt.
And we're all different, right? Yeah. And the embracing the difference is, to me, one of the most enjoyable things. I find, like, and I was just telling another podcast guest that, I love people who are thinkers, right? And I think that when you're a thinker, it shows level of humility. It says, I don't know everything, right?
Yeah,
I'm seeking, I'm thinking, I'm learning. And, so when you mentioned and said kind of everybody goes about that different. I mean, I know some people that are that could come off as arrogant to plenty of people, but because I know them and I know the way that they go through their thought patterns, and that I've invested the time to get to know them, it's really powerful, right? But you can see where on the surface, if you don't fly the humility flag, loud and proud, it's a hard thing to sense.
It is. And, I think arrogance can get confused sometimes. People often say to me, well, if I'm in a situation and I think I need to, talk a little bit about some of my successes, am I not humble? No, that's not being humble. No, you are in situations where that's important, and you're not like trying to toot your own horn and, shout from the rooftops. That's not what this is about. It's appropriate in a certain scenario.
It's all about intention too.
Yeah,
right? If it's intentional for the purpose of telling a story about the boat you have. And I mean, versus of, I want to make sure that Rob knows what kind of boat I have.
Exactly.
I want to make sure, and I'm asserting it in that way. It's completely
Totally.
different. So
Totally. Know thyself. That's discipline number 3.
yeah,
I think you're right. And you have to be comfortable. Your true self has to know where it's really coming from. Your ego has to know, like if I'm talking about my boat, to use your example, that this is just in the regular course of conversation. I'm not like, pumping my chest about it.
Well, I always think of you can tell the difference when someone's name dropping or someone's purposefully leveraging.
That's
the
another
name,
great example,
right?
Yeah,
very, very clear. And it's funny because people's bullshit meter is a very powerful innate tool that we have.
Speaking of that,
we
you go through an exercise, and you can do this. It's so simple. Draw a line. And on one end of the line is the word arrogant, and on the other end is humble. And put a hash mark where you place yourself on the arrogant to humble spectrum. Okay, so that's one thing. That's you kind of...
is this like the song "You're So Vain" though? Like if you put humble, you're really arrogant.
People ask me that actually. That's a good question. Actually, no, it's not.
Okay.
It's okay to put yourself on the far end of the humble scale if you think you are. But here's where it really gets good. We encourage you to send it to 5 to 10 people that know you best. And here's what is interesting. I've had many people who won't do it. And they'll say to me, I'll ask them, what happened when you sent it to the other people? And they'll say, I couldn't get myself to do it. And I'd say, well, what are you afraid of? What are you worried about? Well, obviously, they're worried that they're going to be seen as arrogant.
Sure.
And they're worried that this whole exercise is going to be misinterpreted. And so it's an interesting mental exercise to put yourself through, and then actually send an email, because we encourage just send an email and press the button send.
And what do you do? Just say, hey, on 0 to 5, where would you put me or something? Or do you just draw it out?
Yeah, we say draw a line. One end is humble, the other end is arrogant. And just put a tick mark where you think I land, anywhere on that spectrum.
Okay, so you don't share what your own personal opinion was?
No, you don't say your own personal opinion. Okay. Yeah, just where do I land? I had one client who shared with me his results weren't good, and he was surprised, and it brought him to tears.
Oh, no.
It brought him to tears. No, that's good.
Oh, okay.
That's releasing. Yes, no, in this podcast, this is good.
Okay, great.
We like tears. That's liquid emotion. Awesome. That's just your reaction to an emotion, a feeling, and it was a good wake up for him, and because he felt he was humble, and that what's he going to do now? He's going to change his behavior. Or he's going
to be living with that same feeling, and
he doesn't want to.
He doesn't want to live with that.
No,
anymore.
we don't want to feel. We don't want to feel that way. We don't want to have other people in our lives that we love so deeply feel that we're arrogant. No, we don't want that. We will change. Most of us will.
Sure.
Yeah, the vast majority, especially if they're in our program, they're interested in growing in their life. Yeah.
Wow. So. What else do you think we should be talking about here? Of all the things that I could be asking you, what should I be asking you?
One of my favorite, that we have our 3 discoveries. And the 3 discoveries, discovery number 1 is I am driven. Discovery number 2 is decisions are made out of love or fear. And discovery number 3 is it is possible to be driven and have inner peace. So we talked about driven. Mm-hmm. Okay. And most of the people we work with, they like discovery number 1, because when I say to them, you are driven, they go, yeah, I am. Yeah, I am.
Yeah. Badge of honor.
Badge of honor.
Badge of honor.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah. And I love that too, because to your point, 10% of the population, you mentioned it earlier, is driven. 4% are entrepreneurs. So any entrepreneur, any person in a leadership position, you're in a very small category. And that's a really cool thing, because you make impact. You are the people that think about things differently, that create things. You are workers, we've established that. And so, you are the people that make a difference in this world in small and really big ways. So congratulations, own it. I love that for you. But the next one and I'm curious what you what you thought about, or maybe you haven't thought much about it, and we'll talk about it, is that decisions are made from love or fear. And this is a really important thing. Love is from your heart. Fear is from your ego. Now let's bring this into business, because this is where it's kind of easiest for you and me and many of the listeners. So what comes up for you when you hear this idea that every decision that you're making is either coming from love or fear, your heart or your ego?
Yeah, it's not the first time that I've heard it. So I think I told you, a friend of mine, Chris Saris, is in the coaching world, and he often throws that at me.
Cool.
Is this out of love or is this out of fear? And it's amazing how many decisions, whether it's your own or your own people, and watching it and asking that question. And I'm not doing a great job at asking it on everything, but boy, when you do, it's so eye-opening.
Yes,
right?
it is.
And the fear, at the end of the day, when what's the Billy Joel song where he says, they'll tell you can't sleep alone in a strange place. They'll tell you can't sleep with somebody else. So that either way you wake up with yourself.
Yeah.
Okay. And so, when you kind of realize, certain enlightenment, right? Like you've certainly found, or, certain acceptance of God, or certain acceptance of life and the finality of it and whatnot. You get to this point where you're like, okay, am I fearful that something's going to go away? Is it life? Is it money? Is it, what is it? And so is it the comfort? Is it and so, it's a pretty powerful thing there. Right. And when you're in the flow, what did you call it?
Float.
When you're in the float, with the W, that it's love. Right.
That's
and it's
right.
because you're doing the right thing. So if it's a customer, let's say you're doing the right thing for the customer for the right reason.
Yeah.
You know it to be right. And so really when I tell anyone that's in our sales department, when you're selling something to someone, you're not selling anything. All you're trying to do is allow them to allow you to give them the help that you believe firmly that they need.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
We're not selling snake oil. We're not selling gold-plated anything. It's the right thing for you. And so, and if they choose not to believe that, you get to wake up with a clean conscience, right? Of I presented the right thing. Now, you certainly can look back and go, okay, the whole, three fingers pointing back at you. What did I miss maybe from their needs perspective, or what did I miss from their own visibility perspective? Did I not explain something in a way that they were able to consume?
Right.
Right. And so if they're not able to understand if something's a level 10 risk, and no matter how loud you're shouting it, they're only perceiving it as a 2, they're not going to make a move. Okay. Maybe stop shouting. Right. Maybe that's not how they need to receive that message. Right.
Yeah.
So whether it's, I've got a blog coming out right now about fear mongering, right? And how toxic it is in the cybersecurity world, right? It's so toxic that with the news plus the people that make the cybersecurity products, all the fear mongering, we've basically muted out. You can't even hear it. You need cybersecurity. Of course I do. Right. I'm sure somebody's taking care of that.
Yeah.
Right. And it's not working.
Yeah. We talk about that in the book, actually.
You got to talk on the frequency that the person is tuned into.
Yeah, you're right.
So,
you're right.
So I think that, but again, if you know that your intention is love motivated, not fear motivated, if you're selling somebody something because you need to make payroll, it's probably going to be erring more towards the fear side, and so you have to do a lot of extra work to make sure that you're airing it to the love side.
That's right. And I mean, great examples. I always like to use an example of that great salesperson that you have. And they do not fit your culture whatsoever, but they're bringing in revenue constantly, but just disrupting everybody in the company's lives. I mean, everything they bring in, whenever it's like it's a tornado came through. So now everyone's complaining. We're leading the company and we say, yeah, but she brings in, she's a big percentage of our growth this year. Everybody says, oh, okay. They look the other way. Behind closed doors, they're upset. They go home to their families. They're stressed out. They had a bad day because of this person. It happens all the time. Why do we hold on to those people? Well, obviously, we fear losing the associated revenue and growth to our company. That's an ego-based decision. That means you don't believe in your heart that you can replace that.
Right.
Yeah. So watch for that, you all, because that's a real simple example and very common one, actually. I hear it all the time.
We don't have any true statistic on this, but from your own perspective, the situations that you took the leap back over to the love side and off the fear side and let that person go, whether it was a salesperson or whatever it was, but somebody who was not meshing appropriately with culture, somebody that you were defending based on maybe the number that they were creating versus the true cultural impact that they were creating. How many times was that the wrong move?
Never. Obviously,
Zero.
It's
Every
zero.
time.
I mean, it's like the skies opened up and everybody felt lighter, and it was like, wow.
But isn't it wild how hard that is still every time?
Yeah.
Or
That's
are
ego.
you at the point now where that's not hard anymore?
Well, I don't think it's hard anymore at all. Yeah,
Okay.
It's easy for me.
Okay.
Like I definitely have the experience. So I've had plenty of the other side of it, but ego just doesn't play in anymore. It just doesn't. Because I believe whatever path I'm going to go down is going to create greater opportunity. And I just have to trust. That's just trusting. I think personally, we're way too in our heads all the time because we're trying to take the safe route, the one that we calculate is going to be so perfect. And what I'm here to share with you is you've had failures doing that. And those failures are actually wins, because what ends up happening is it opens up a new path that you may not have gone into, and that creates success.
Do you think that that's because this might be my woo? Here's my woo coming in, is that we're so far off of the kind of the design, right? Like we're designed to be hunters and gatherers, right? And so if let's not going back too far, but go back a couple hundred years and just say you were a farmer, right? Might be pretty easy to allow your brain while you're plowing that field to be in that Zen state, and you're working yourself physically to a point of exhaustion at the night, eat dinner, go to bed, right? And we didn't leave room for all of this chatter and noise, which is why we think so much. Why? Because there's too many data points coming in.
Too many.
At once. And so I just don't know how else, unless you do something intentional to mute it down.
You just go said it. Yeah, you do know what to do. You have to be intentional.
Go skiing.
That's why, some people say to us, I don't like discipline, it's like, listen, if you have 10 things that you're really clear about in your life that create a strong foundation, and I said, just do those 10 things and everything else will begin to fall in place. Naturally, it will feel like ease. That's inner peace. Why wouldn't you do that? Like, why I'm trying to understand what the rub is here for you. But we have contraction. We have contraction in our lives. Those are deeper rooted issues. That's for another time.
Yeah, I know. I'm already thinking about.
But I think you're onto something, and I would say it's not as woo woo as you think it is. I mean, there's a lot of realism to the inputs that were we created to have news in our face like 24/7, and trying to determine whether it's accurate, not accurate, whose opinion do we trust, whose opinion don't we trust, etc. In business. All the people shouting at us, like I am, about all the things you should be doing,
right. Isn't that great? I mean, but this is where, though, I think that, again, with you guys creating a process, right, and a program is, because you can only have so many gurus that you're talking to. Right?
That's right.
And so, I think that, I guess this would be my value plug for you would be, you guys have both been there and done that on the entrepreneurial thing, right? You're doing it on the coaching thing. And that makes you kind of a good one-stop shop, right? Because I think even you, I mean, like when you said, you were seeking therapy, right? That therapist, you had to be thinking, but you don't get it. You don't run a company like I run. You're not trying to grow something like I'm trying to grow. You'd never get it.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the importance of, I mean, I'm a proponent of peer groups like Vistage and EO and YPO and that. And I'm also a proponent of a limited amount of, who are you getting your information from?
That's right. That's right.
And your training and your coaching and everything like that.
Yeah, that's good wisdom. Yeah, for sure.
This has been great. And is there anything else you want to make sure that we talk about here, or do you think we should just?
I think you did a great job.
I think we need to do another one. To be honest.
Well, no, look, I just really appreciate that you were the guinea pig here.
No problem.
No, that was a lot of fun.
And
you did a great job opening up.
I've been listening to the book, and I'm going to get through the other half on my next car.
Enjoy it, and for those out there, you'll come to find out at the end of the book, there's a extended interview that Gino and I do together. And it's really an amazing interview. I interviewed Gino.
Oh, great.
Which is one of my, one of the gifts that I've had in my life, to be able to interview people well, like you're doing. And so we have an amazing conversation, and we go deep, and you can hear a lot. If you're interested in the EOS journey, that's only part of it, but you can hear a lot about, kind of his journey. Yeah.
Well, and people can, if people want a little bit more from you, you still have the Do Nothing podcast, correct?
I do. No, Gino and I have a new podcast that's we're about 70 episodes.
Well, that one I'm familiar with.
The Shed
too.
and Shine episode.
Yep, Shed and Shine.
So no, I had to see. That was a say no often moment.
Okay.
Boy, was that hard.
I'll bet.
But yeah, I had to. We had to put it to rest.
Okay.
Because I had to put all my focus in where I could make the greatest impact, and Shed and Shine was going to be what that was.
Beautiful.
So.
Well, again, eating your own dog food.
I had to,
once
right?
again, man.
Yeah, but the 10disciplines.com is where you can find all things about everything we talked about.
And is this assessment free?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, the assessment's free, and go on there and take it, and we'll talk to you if you want to hear more about it.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for doing this. This has been
thanks for having me.
Enlightening. I got a lot of stuff I got to go home and work on now, but it's always a pleasure.
And what a pleasure to see you and just like drive up the street, and be up here in my hometown, because nobody's up here.
Right.
You guys are all downstate.
Right.
So.
Yeah. Well, we're up here quite a bit.
I know you are. You come up.
But yeah, this is as I mentioned, this is one of my happy places.
I know
here,
it is.
so.
I know it is.
Yeah.
Thanks, my man.
Yeah,
Appreciate you.
great to see you. Thanks for everything. This episode of the BLTNT podcast is sponsored by Auxium, business IT and cybersecurity designed to outsmart chaos. And powered by Juniper Networks. Automate your network with Juniper Networks and the Mist AI platform, the world's first AI-driven wired and wireless network.